has found that care homes are implementing different rules when it comes to visiting this Christmas.
Some families have told us they're having to fight for limited time slots to see their loved ones, while others have been told they won't be able to visit at all.
This is, of course, the second year restrictions have been put in place during the festive period. Zoe Conway has more.
Well done. I'll get you another rolling pin, Jean.
The residents of the Heathfield care home in Warrington might have dementia, but they've not lost their dignity. Staff here try to support and encourage them.
I can't wait to taste these, can you?
The home hasn't had a single case of COVID. They want to keep it that way this Christmas.
Christmas Days was special, actually. It's a lovely atmosphere. Normally speaking, a number of residents would go out to be with families. This year, we're suggesting that's not going to happen because of the virus, new strain of the virus. It'll be a very happy, festive time. The chef will make a superb Christmas lunch.
You better perhaps move that hand up, because you won't put a hole in the side.
We don't want a hole in your jumper, do we?
Doreen often doesn't know who Peter is, but there's no mistaking her joy at having her son by her side. Peter says the home has been good at consulting families about visits.
We've discussed together our thoughts on how things should open up and not be opened up. So we're involved in the process continually, and that gives you a great reassurance that we've got some influence.
The government's guidelines state that they expect and encourage care providers to facilitate visits wherever possible, and to do so in a risk-managed way. But several families with relatives at other homes have told us they're not getting enough access at Christmas. Wendy's mother suffered a catastrophic stroke 14 years ago.
She lost the use of her right-hand side completely and has absolutely no speech at all. But she's mum. She's still mum. She's still very much my mum.
She's frustrated that she'll only get an hour with her mother on Christmas Day.
We all know COVID's going to be with us for some time. We've got to find a way of living with it and not being stuck in this draconian method of looking after your relatives. It doesn't help them mentally, does it?
Some families said they thought staff shortages were to blame for the lack of visits. One woman who doesn't want to be named told me she's not allowed to visit her mother on Christmas Day. Can you understand where the home's coming from, though? They're trying to protect the residents.
No, I think they're just trying to keep everyone out.
She could take her mother home for the day, but she says her mother's too frail to be moved.
I feel as if I've abandoned her and that she wouldn't think I cared. And that's the upsetting thing.
Eileen says her mother's home is offering 4 families a 30-minute slot on Christmas Day. She doesn't know yet whether she'll be one of them.
My mother trained as a nurse in the Second World War. She'd been a district nurse all her working life. It's breaking my heart, actually. That's what it's about.
The government says that every care home resident should be supported to have an essential caregiver who can visit the home to offer companionship and who can visit even if there's a COVID outbreak in the home. But look at Sylvia, beautiful dress. John's wife Sylvia is in a home and has dementia. What do you love about her?
Sense of humour, gentleness, her love for everybody.
He's been trying for months to get essential caregiver status so he can visit Sylvia more often.
It gives her reassurance there is someone there to hold and touch and cuddle as necessary, which she has lost over the last year and a half. As I have to say, so have I. The government has said that essential caregivers are allowed to visit homes, are allowed to have personal contact with their loved ones, and yet it doesn't seem to be happening. And I don't know why. I really am quite exasperated, not just for myself, but as I said, for thousands upon thousands of other people who are exactly the same situation as I am.
The challenge for care homes is that for so many families, Christmas is about so much more than the festive rituals. It's about being with their loved ones. Zoe Conway, BBC News.
We're joined now by Diane Mayhew, who's the co-founder of Rights for Residents, and Nadra Ahmed, who is chair of the National Care Association. Good morning to you both. Diane, morning.
Good morning.
Morning. Now, I know you're the co-founder of Rights for Residents. We can talk about kind of what you do separately, but tell me why this is so important to you as we approach Christmas and there are so many varying rules around the restrictions when it comes to visiting.
OK, Nadra, well, firstly, thank you for covering this really important issue. But it's important because we have all the precautionary measures in place for people going into care homes now. But unfortunately, despite the government guidance stating that visitors should be welcome and embraced because they should be seen as part of the family care, that is not the case in many care homes. Christmas visits are being banned. You know, for some people, this will be their last Christmas.
What do you fear, because you have experience of not being able to see a loved one in a care home?
We've suffered the window visits at the early stages, but that was before we had the tests, before we had the vaccines,
and who was that
before
with?
That was with Jenny's mum, Jean, so my mother-in-law, and she had advanced dementia, and she didn't understand what a virus was, you know, and trying to explain that to someone that's got advanced dementia is extremely difficult. So these videos and pods, they're just torturous when you've got someone in that situation.
Can I ask you, Dan, there's kind of two sides of this. On the one hand, there's the well-being of the person who's in the care home. Well, it could be the hospital, but we're talking about care homes.
Yeah.
And the other side of it is people like yourself, the relatives who desperately want to do the right thing, who want to be there for their loved one. What about the impact on those people, on the relatives? Over time, when they're not able to see or be with their loved one?
We have 12,000 members in Rights for Residents now, and I can tell you that many of them are on antidepressants, many of them are undergoing therapy. They're broken. They cannot cope with having their loved one in a place where they are banned from seeing them. You know, everybody should have family contact. You know, it's a basic human right that everybody in society takes for granted. But unfortunately, for people who are living in care, they don't get to choose. Their rights have been taken away and left to care providers to make that decision as to who goes in, who doesn't go in. And it's a postcode lottery.
So, Nadra, do you want to pick up on this for us? Because the people who run care homes are in an unenviable position here. Everyone can see that. They're trying to keep the people who are in the care homes safe, and they have relatives saying, we need to see our loved ones. How do you balance up those two places, especially where we are now with the concerns about the new variant?
Well, I think it's devastating to hear some of the things that have just been said, because it is very, very difficult. And for a care provider, the best thing we can do is return back to pre-COVID times where we had open visiting. People came and went as they wanted. We didn't have to book them in for visits. We didn't have to test them. These are all guidelines that have been put in, which we have to abide by at a time where we have one of the most chronic shortages of staff. So we have to get our staff away from the main job to try and do all of that facilitation. Visits are really key in the well-being of the people we care for. And we know that. And most providers are doing absolutely everything they can in order to make this happen. This is at the backdrop of new regulations that have come in, but we've got a variant that is very challenging. So on the one hand, we're telling society you've got to now be careful and close down. But on the other hand, the visiting says that you must facilitate it, which is right and proper, but you must make the risk assessment. And that's what providers are doing. So if you haven't got enough staff on the day and you've got only enough staff to be dealing with the festivities of Christmas, then you may make that decision. But the vast majority of providers are keeping an open house. But if you've got 30 residents, 40, 50, 60, 80, how are we going to make it feasible or possible for every resident's family to visit on that day?
Nadra, can I just interrupt you for a second? I'm looking at Diane here in the studio as you're talking, and you're shaking your head. What is it that you're thinking?
Well, Charlie, you know, the staff shortages. If care providers enlisted the help of family who could go into the loved one's room and provide that emotional support that they sorely need, then they should see family as help, not a hindrance. We know that there are staff shortages and families are very happy to fill in. You know, you're absolutely right, Nadra, it's about balancing the risk. But for a lot of people, that risk isn't being balanced. They're just being told that they won't see their loved one at Christmas. And this could be their last Christmas. Jenny and I saw Jean up until she died. We were essential visitors. But unfortunately, we never got to see her last Christmas, and it was to be her last. And we will never forget that or forgive. There is no reason now that we've got all these protections, variant or no variant, they've been triply vaccinated. There are no other mitigating measures that anyone can take. So what's the alternative? We keep them locked up forever.
Nadra?
Well, I think you've got to look at the risk assessments. I go back to that. The guidance that we have is very, very clear that the provider must enable that risk assessment. We're insured around these things, and that is a huge challenge. We've got to make sure that every resident's family is then given access. So having 60 people in the home in different rooms would be very challenging. And I think, I don't
surely,
think
Nadra,
there's a way...
sorry to interrupt, but surely, you know, especially if you've got 2 days around Christmas, this can be organised, especially if you've got family members who say, right, we are triple vaxxed, we have done our lateral flow test or even PCRs, we know we're safe, physically safe, so we can help. Surely that can be organised and should be welcomed.
Well, a lot of providers, I have to tell you, are doing that, and there will be exceptions. And I think we're talking about the exceptions. Generally speaking, every provider that I have spoken to is facilitating these. And actually, before this variant came about, all the rosters were done. And we had staff working, and we had everything was in situ. The day after the guidance came out, everything was in place. We then hear about the variant, and then there are challenges. So we have Public Health England to look at. We have to look at all the other guidance that comes around from all the bodies. So providers are doing that, and I don't want anyone to go away thinking that every provider out there is banning, which is a terrible word to use. They may be suspending visits. It's just the circumstances of where we are trying our very, very best against all the odds.
Nadra, I thank you very much. I think, you know, the difference between words such as banning and suspending, I saw you gasp there, it's potato, potato, isn't it? Or tomato, tomato in that sense. It feels the same, doesn't it?
And also, you know, to be perfectly honest, the excuses that we're getting are that, you know, some care homes are saying that they can't facilitate visits, no other explanation. Other care homes are, and I take your point that some are allowing it, and which makes it even worse.
And as Nadra said, it's the exception.
Yeah, it's the exception. So if people can embrace it, why can't they all? You know, some are saying you can take your loved one out, but if you do that, they'll have to isolate for 14 days. That's not in the guidance. People who are bedbound or frail, that's not an opportunity that they can take up because they're too frail to go out for the day. But the alternative is no visits at all.
Diane, thank you so much for sharing. Well, it's a very personal story. We do understand that, and I suspect it's something we will revisit again. Thank you very much. And also, Nadra Ahmed, thank you for your time this morning, Chair of the National Care Association. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. It's time to find out what's happening.